the student is able to independently identify the landmark on a radiograph, the objective of this particular lecture would be achieved. Before we go to the landmarks in specific, it is very important to understand how does the tooth appear on a radiograph. So in the next few slides, we will be discussing how the tooth and the surrounding structures appear in the radiograph. One of the basics required for understanding the radiography is to determine which structure is radiopaque and which structure is radiolucent. Radiopaque, in very simple terms, refers to all the areas which appear light or white on a radiograph. Radiolucent simply means all the areas which appear dark or black on the radiograph. For example, enamel appears radiopaque, the pulp chamber and the root canals appear radiolucent on a radiograph. It is very important for a dentist to understand what lamina dura is. Lamina dura is a thin radiopaque I mean whitish area that surrounds the roots of the teeth. In simple terms, it is the alveolar socket bone which covers the root of the teeth. On a radiograph, it appears white or radiopaque. On the inner surface of it will be a radiolucent or blackish area which represents the periodontal ligament space. Lamina dura appears white because the X-rays pass tangentially through this area. You can take 30 seconds and try to guess what is the radiolucent landmark we are trying to refer to. The radiolucent landmark is pointed by whitish arrows on either side. Please make a rough guess before we go into the description of this landmark on the next slide. The radiolucent landmark we were referring to in the previous slide is known as the intermaxillary suture or simply mid-palatine suture. Now this landmark extends anteriorly from the alveolar bone between the central incisor to the hard palate region. It usually has a uniform width. However, the path may not be always linear. There may be mild curvatures along the path. Also, it may not be seen in all radiographs. Only when the X-rays pass perpendicular through the radiolucent or the mid-palatine suture area, it can be seen clearly on a radiograph. So it's not a must that it should be seen on all radiographs. However, it is seen in a majority of the radiographs of the maxillary anterior region. Please take 20 seconds to guess what is the triangular radiopaque structure the white arrow is pointing at. We'll be discussing about this structure in the very next slide. The radiopaque triangular structure or the V-shaped structure we were pointing at is the anterior nasal spine. On the right side, you can see a gross anatomy structure of the anterior nasal spine. Now, this typically is present in an area more apical to the root tips of the central incisor with nasal cavity on either sides of it. It may be overlapped by the mid-palatine suture or the intermaxillary suture. Also take time of 20 seconds to guess what these three landmarks are. One is the bilateral landmark pointed by whitish arrows. The second landmark we are expecting you to notice is a radiopaque landmark which is in the middle of the two radiolucent area. And the third landmark we are expecting you to find is a radiopaque area overlapping the root apices of the central incisors. The correct answer for the three radiographs are here. The first one, the radiopaque linear landmark, is actually the nasal septum. The second one, or the one in the middle, is actually the soft tissue shadow of the nose which overlaps the root apices of the central incisors. The third landmark, which is horizontal radiopaque line on either side, is nothing but the floor of the nasal cavity. You can take another 10 seconds to guess what this circular appearing radiolucent area present in between the roots of the two central incisor is. We'll discuss about it in the very next slide. The radiolucent area in between the roots of the two central incisors is the nasopalatine foramen. Now this foramen will contain blood vessels and nerves supplying that particular area. It is usually circular or spherical in shape, and the size is usually less than a centimeter. However, in case of a cystic change within the foramen, the size can be enlarged. Take another 5 seconds to guess what this inverted Y-shaped landmark is. The lines A and B, or the arrows with A and B, show the two arms of the Y, and the other radio-opaque area, which extends further apically, shows the stem of the Y. You need to tell what this radio-opaque landmark, which is having an inverted Y shape, is. The appropriate answer for the previous question is inverted Y line of Ennis. Now this inverted Y line of Ennis is formed due to the junction of the floor of the nasal cavity, represented by line A, and the floor of the maxillary sinus, represented by the line B. When both of them merge, most often in the first premolar or canine area, it forms an inverted Y line-like image, which is known as the inverted Y line of Ennis. Take around 5 seconds to guess what is the radio-opaque line running from the lower end of the film across the middle of the root of the premolar to the apex of the canine is, whether it is a hard tissue or a soft tissue. Make a guess and find the answer in the very next slide. The answer for the previous question is nasolabial fold, or the cheek mask. Now if you observe the clinical image on the right side, an area which is marked with an elliptical circle, which is black in color, shows you exactly where the nasolabial fold is located. Now this nasolabial fold is replicated in some intraoral radiographs as a radio-opaque line with radiolucent area in the front and radio-opaque area in the back, overlapping the molar anterior and the premolar area. So this is actually a soft tissue extraoral landmark which has a shadow on intraoral radiographs of that particular region. The posterior region of the maxilla is perhaps the most difficult area to interpret. Now this is because there are a series of radio-opaque lines which overlap the roots of the molar. If you can, make a guess of what these lines could be. We'll have the answer in the next slide. To make things simple, we have color-coded the landmark. The first landmark, let us start from the top. The first landmark, depicted by the reddish arrow, is the floor of the nasal cavity. The floor of the nasal cavity is usually linear and does not show any form of scalloping or any sort of curvature. Just below it is a U-shaped radio-opaque landmark, which is the zygomatic arch. Remember, typically a zygomatic arch will have a U shape. The last landmark we are going to discuss here with reference to this radiograph is shown by the green arrow. Now this is the floor of the maxillary sinus. The floor of the maxillary sinus will usually tend to have a more scalloped appearance going along with the curvature of the roots of the maxillary molars. So these are the three landmarks, and you need to repeatedly look at many radiographs to identify these landmarks correctly. It is not a strict rule that the maxillary sinus is a single chamber. At times it can have different forms or different appearance. We have three different radiographs which shows a lot of alterations within the maxillary sinus cavity. We'll be discussing about each of these variations in the next slide. The first variation is when you have a tooth extracted or a maxillary molar extracted for a long duration. What usually happens is there is alveolar bone which gets resolved, and finally it reaches the maxillary floor sinus of that area. So there will be a very thin layer of alveolar bone separating the maxillary sinus with the oral cavity. The second variation is multiple septations. Now, usually maxillary sinus is a single septate, but at times during the developmental stage, it can go multiseptation. That means there may be many septae within the maxillary sinus. The third radiograph is the sinus that is divided into two cavities by a thick septate. So this is a more common phenomenon compared to multiple septations. There are two important landmarks we are looking as we go into the posterior region of the maxilla. One is a radiopaque landmark posterior to the maxillary second or the third molar. After that, we see a radiolucent V-shaped area. So we would be looking to identify what these two areas are. We will find the answer in the next slide. So let us know what these landmarks are. Behind the maxillary molar, the radiopaque area is the maxillary tuberosity. After that, we have a V-shaped radiolucent area which is known as the hamellar notch. Then there is a reddish arrow which points again to a radio-opaque area which are the pterygoid plates. Now, if you have to look at the gross specimen, number 9 indicates the pterygoid plates. Here, there is a very important question. There are 3 white arrows which shows a radiopaque triangular area in a maxillary posterior radiogram. Could you identify or guess what this landmark is? A clue is that this particular landmark is not a part of maxilla. We'll find the answer in the very next slide. The answer to the previous spotter on the radiograph is the coronoid process of the mandible. Remember, the coronoid process of the mandible will appear in the radiograph of maxillary second or third molar region. Now this is because it tends to overlap the X-rays, it tends to overlap the region of concern. The X-rays will have to pass through the tip of the coronoid process most of the time during the radiographic procedure. So it is very common to see this particular landmark, which is a mandibular landmark on the radiograph of maxillary third molar. On rare occasions in an occlusal radiograph posterior region, we may find a radiolucent circular area mimicking a periapical cyst. Now in this image, it is shown by 3 black arrows. Could you make a guess of what this landmark is? The answer is present in the very next slide. The occlusal radiograph is usually made with a high positive vertical angulation. So the X-rays would have to pass through the nasolacrimal canal before it could reach the maxilla. During this procedure, it makes a radiolucent shadow on the posterior part of the maxilla. So it is actually the shadow of the nasolacrimal canal that is seen there. It is extremely rare to find these images on an intraoral periapical radiograph. However, in a maxillary occlusal radiograph posterior region, one may find this more frequently. For any more information on this particular topic, please refer the text that is attached